Good morning, everyone. I am Xing Xing, and together with Yuki and Valerie, today we are going to present the article How Captions Help People Learn Languages, a working memory eye tracking study, and this is from Language Learning and Technology. This is the outline of our presentation today, and now let's dive into the introduction to the study. A very important part of second language learning is processing stimuli from written text or speech, and in listening, segmenting speech can be very difficult for L2 learners, and if it's not done successfully, it would be unlikely for them to learn from listening. And in this case, captions can be beneficial. They are printed words put on a screen, and they create a visual means in addition to oral language input for determining linguistic units such as words, morphemes, and grammatical components. This aids learners in turning oral speech stream to individual meaningful words and phrases. In the previous study of the authors, the following was investigated. One of their major findings was that captions helped with listening comprehension and segmenting speech streams into meaningful components. And in this article, the researchers extend their earlier work. The main concern is with how individual differences impact caption use, with a focus on learners' working memory capacities. Let's look into some previous studies that are relevant to this research. First, the area of captions within multimedia learning and working memory theories. This study is grounded in multimedia learning, a theory that claims learning is deeper and longer lasting when there is both oral and visual input. Multimedia learning theory is based on the multimedia principle. People can learn more deeply from words and pictures than from words alone. And there are two underlying assumptions of multimedia learning stated in a previous study. First, multimedia learning occurs when there are multiple input channels, generally visual and oral. And second, individuals have a limited capacity for information processing in a single mode. Therefore, learners must be selective and attend to only certain input in a particular modality to prevent cognitive processing overload. Also, working memory serves key functions in this, and here's how. Information first enters temporary memory stores, then through working memory, this is when learners map linguistic form to meaning, it is more permanently stored in long-term memory, which is for higher level cognitive functions. So effective use of the working memory system is critical for successful learning. Now, let's take a look at the aspect of captions and the limitations of working memory. L2 comprehension taxes learners' working memory and other cognitive resources, leading to some limitations under the following circumstances. Captions are overlaid on a video, so at first glance, captions and video may compete in learners' visual channel, risking cognitive overload. Also, if the level of the video content is too difficult for language learners and includes too much new information, the processing load increases, making the intake and use of the multiple modalities more difficult. However, if the content is familiar and not difficult, the learner may not need captions to facilitate processing, and in such cases, captions could be seen as superfluous. Now let's move on to the role of captions in second and foreign language multimedia learning. Previous studies have found that captions statistically and significantly influenced listening comprehension and vocabulary learning. Nevertheless, there are still some factors that influence learners' caption use. In terms of captions in repeated viewings, researchers have found that watching a video with captions 2 times was the most effective. Additionally, for learners without script dissimilarity, which means their L1 and L2 are written in similar forms, the written captions serve as the initial intake, while for learners with script dissimilarity, the oral information serves as the initial intake. So from this, we can conclude that major L1, L2 script differences are likely to affect how captions are used. Also, learners' L2 proficiency affects how learners use and benefit from captions. But regarding this, there have been mixed findings. Some researchers found that caption use was more beneficial for learners with lower proficiency, while others found the opposite. And another factor is the speed of captions. A study found that increased speed of captions leads to learners' focus shifting to more static information. And another study found that adding captions to faster narration is not beneficial for comprehension. Now, aside from the benefits of caption use, researchers have also raised criticism against captions for providing too tempting a crutch for those students who are ready to test their listening skills in a caption-less environment. Therefore, to prevent that, the viewer's language level must be not too far from the difficulty level of the captioned material. With the previous findings in mind, a fuller understanding of the factors affecting L2 and foreign language caption use is still needed. And here are the questions that the researchers tried to answer in this study. 1. Does captioning aid comprehension? 2. What is the relationship between working memory and L2 video comprehension? Do learners with high working memory capacity comprehend more than learners with low working memory capacity? 3. What is the relationship between working memory and caption reading behavior? Are there differences in caption reading behavior between learners with high working memory and learners with low working memory? 4. What is the relationship between caption reading behavior and L2 video comprehension? Are there differences in caption reading behaviors between learners who demonstrate high video comprehension and learners who demonstrate low video comprehension? Next, we will have Yuki to talk about the method used to find out the answer to these questions.
Hello everyone, my name is Yuki and we will now move on to the part of methods, and I'm going to give a brief introduction and summary of the two experiments in this paper. This paper focuses on how language learners make use of captions and its relationship with working memory. The researchers conducted two different experiments for this study. Experiment 1 is for the foreign language learners who are learning Spanish in the USA, and the experiment 2 are participated by language learners whose second language is English. The purpose of these two different kinds of experiments is to find out whether the environment will affect the caption use and working memory. In the experiment 1, the participants have limited or less exposure to the target language. On the other hand, the participants in the experiment 2 have greater exposure and can have more second language inputs in their daily lives. And next, we will move on to the material in this experiment. First of all, the study used a technology called eye-checking in order to capture the caption use behaviors. And here is a demonstration video of how this technology works.
All you Saskatchewan people for sharing your opinions on local municipal government. Now, who wants to start?
Well, truth is, the grids could use some work, eh?
The grids?
Yeah. I was cruising to Speedy Creek to get a fragile lacty the other day. The grid on that back 40 is brutal. I almost hit the rhubarb. I bust open a 2-4 pill that I had just got at the LB.
No kidding, eh? We were driving by the nuisance ground on the way to Kaiser tournament, and I was just goosing her when the front wheel went into a hole the size of a dugout.
Okay, as you can see in the video, the eye tracking is basically a device or a system that can capture your eye movements. Since our eye movements reflect the idea in our brains, the researchers can use this to study what human minds are thinking when they are watching the video. And through this gathered data, researchers then can find out patterns of participants' reading behaviors. Materials in this experiment. First of all, the length of the video is 4 minutes and 37 seconds. It's a nature documentary about the story of wild bear, and it also features narration and on-camera commentary of a biologist. And since the study is about caption use, it also has captions in 2 different languages, in both Spanish and English. And then in this both experiments, the level of comprehension was mentioned by asking participants questions and asked them to write a detailed summary of the video. There is no time limit for this test, but most of the participants takes about 15 to 20 minutes to finish the test. They can also write in whatever language they wish, and the researchers will use Idea Uni to keep scores for them. Finally, is the working memory test. In this study, use a SPAN test called RSPAN to capture and text the verbal working memory. And this test is basically to ask the participants to read the string of letters or sentences, and then ask the participants to try to recall them. The more they can remember means that they have higher working memory. And now for the procedure of the experiment. First of all, the participants will have to fill out a background questionnaire. It's about their academic background, their age, their sex, and other personal information. And then the researchers will set up the eye-checking machine, and the participants will watch the video for the first time, with or without the captions, depending on the experiments they are participating in. And then they will take a short break. Then, after the break, the researchers will reset the eye-checking machine, and the participants will watch the video for the second time. After the participant watch the video for the second time, they will need to take the comprehension test. And after that, they will also need to take the RSPN test, which is also the working memory test. Then after gather all this data, the researchers then will put it together and to study the relationship with the caption and the working memories. And basically that is the whole procedure of the experiment. And next we will have Valerie to explain the results and the discussion part for us.
Now let's look into the answers to the research questions and try to explain them. Research question 1. Does captioning aid comprehension? The answer to the question is yes. Captions do promote L2 video comprehension, and they react better on ESL learners. The explanation to this is that ESL learners have better general proficiency. Although proficiency levels wasn't specifically featured in the research questions, earlier in the study, the researchers have stated that there might be a language proficiency zone within which the content and language used in the video is more suitable for the learner's comprehension, which brings us to the next research question. What is the relationship between working memory and L2 video comprehension? Do learners with high working memory capacity comprehend more than learners with low working memory capacity? Answering this question, the first experiment shows that there's little to no effect on video comprehension, whereas in the second experiment, it shows that there is a little effect. The researchers proposed that for working memory to play a significant role in comprehending the video, one must meet a certain proficiency threshold. If the language used in the videos was way too above the learner's understanding, the learner could end up interpreting the vocabulary word by word instead and failed at video comprehension. Moving on to research question 3. What is the relationship between working memory and caption reading behavior? Are there differences in caption reading behavior between learners with high working memory and learners with low working memory? The study shows that both the Spanish L2 and ESL group show similar behavior. As you can see on the chart, learners with higher working memory spend less time reading the caption on the second viewing. As to the lower working memory group, the contrary. However, due to the size of the experiment, we will need a bigger sample size to reveal greater differences between the two groups. Last but not least, research question 4. What is the relationship between caption reading behavior and L2 video comprehension? Are there differences in caption reading behaviors between learners who demonstrate high video comprehension and learners who demonstrate low video comprehension? And the answer is, for the ESL group, the differences is not significant. As for the Spanish L2 learners, those with higher working memory spend less time reading captions. And the explanation for this question is quite simple. These ESL learners are living in an English-speaking country. They are familiar with balancing multiple sources of input. Prior research has shown that when the viewers are familiar with reading caption and don't find it a burden, captions are mostly beneficial. However, the answers to the second research question tell us that the first experiment shows that there's little to no effect on video comprehension, whereas in the second experiment, it shows that there's a little effect. In other words, learners used captions regardless of their working memory capacities, but the caption used likely depended in part on the learner's working memory capacities and their L2 proficiency levels relative to the video content. So now, the most important question of all, how do captions help people learn languages? In the study, the researchers elaborate the benefits captions bring to language learning, especially for those with more limited working memory capacities. Working memory limitations are one of the primary motivations for using multimedia instruction. It can neutralize working memory's limiting effects on learning. This research also shows that captions are a powerful visual attraction. Captions can do much good even for those who don't need them. Captions can be a great procession aid and attention control. But at the same time, remember that the teaching and learning materials must be carefully chosen to meet the learner's proficiency for them to learn best. This is the end of our presentation. Thank you for your attention.